Now, Mukesh Kapila wrote a fantastic and insightful book on what happened in Darfur. It's called Against the Tide of Evil. I highly recommend that you do have a look at it. And in it, he describes meeting one woman who came and stood outside his UN office in Darfur, in Khartoum, for days and days on end to try and get his attention. And we just wanted to find out from Dr. Kapila, Professor Kapila, what it was that Aisha said to him that made him so motivated to try and prosecute those and hold those responsible for.
Aisha was a teacher in northern Darfur, and one day she just turned up in my office in Khartoum at the UN and clamored to get in. When she got in, she told me what had happened to her. She had been raped, multiply raped, along with 100 other women in a place called Tawila in northern Darfur. And that was the first direct witness evidence I had that what was going on in Darfur in 2003, 2004 was of such a horrendous nature, so systematic, that it could only be called ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, or indeed genocide. And that is what Aisha taught me. And immediately I was resolved that we had to do something about it. And if the government was not listening, if the world powers were paying no attention to Darfur, then I would have to speak to the world media to try and draw attention to the tragedy that was unfolding in Darfur. And so it's really thanks to Aisha that I had the courage and the evidence to actually speak up and draw the world's attention to the genocidal violence in Darfur.
Now, my last question for Professor Kapila, because we've had a difficult line and because we've had trouble getting through to him during this interview, is what it means over 10 years since he was the head of the UN in the Sudan, in Khartoum, what it means for us to walk away from the crimes, to walk away from the rapes, to walk away from the murders that happened in Darfur, and to leave those crimes, those absolute abhorrent crimes, unanswered for. Professor, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the conflict in Darfur continues. Many more Aishas have been raped, and more recently, there are even compelling stories about the use of chemical weapons in Darfur. It was good that President Bashir got indicted by the International Criminal Court, but the failure to turn that into a proper prosecution because of lack of cooperation from African member states has meant that the agony of Darfur continues. You know, if justice is denied or justice is delayed, then do not be surprised if the world continues to be a lawless place. So the importance of carrying on with trying to prosecute the war crimes and the crimes against humanity in Darfur is to send an example to others that these things will never be tolerated, and above all else, to actually bring the agony of the people of Darfur to an end. You know, your own former President Mbeki, has been leading the African Union peace process to bring about a resolution in Sudan, especially Darfur. But it hasn't got anywhere. And the reason it has not got anywhere, despite Mbeki's best efforts, is because you cannot have peace without justice. That is the lesson we have learned from region after region, from country after country, all over the world. And it was also true in South Africa. It is only after the judicial process, after apartheid was over, that South Africa is moving towards some kind of settlement, reconciliation, and a future. So it's extremely important that we continue to use judicial mechanisms to bring justice when people are affected by great crimes against humanity. And you know, we would not need an international criminal court if there were proper national legal mechanisms and regional mechanisms that worked. But the reality is that dictators and genocidaires are hardly likely to set up those mechanisms in their own countries and regions. And that's why it's extremely important that the peoples of the world are not let down by not having at last a place of last resort where they can go to and get justice for the hurts and crimes against them. And without that, there can be no peace. And without peace, we will continue to have all the conflicts that we're seeing in the world today. And this applies to not just to Darfur, it applies to Burundi, it applies to Congo, it applies also to Syria and other places where we have huge crimes against humanity being committed.